Everyone likes the security of their own home. For many people, it's the one place where they feel truly comfortable. The world is out there and this is their space. That's why stories of people breaking into homes seem to scare us so much. I found some stories from Reddit where real people came face to face with home intruders. Sometimes they won the battle, sometimes they lost, but the stories are always terrifying. I hope you're sitting comfortably because my name is Danny Buck and this is the top 10 scary home intruder stories. Also, really quickly, I just want to shout out Beyond the Screen, our brand new channel where our new host Jocelyn breaks down all things Hollywood and TV. The channel is already growing very fast and you've still got time to be one of the first subscribers by clicking somewhere on the screen right now or by using the link in the description box below. Check it out right after this video. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the weapon. Now if you had to fight off a home intruder, what item would you grab to use as a weapon? For Reddit user Water Guardian, they grabbed possibly the most badass thing I can think of. They said, I was living in Las Vegas at the time and I have always been a night person. I was asleep in my bed when I heard banging at my door around 10 AM. I was still really tired but decided to just go and see who the hell was beating at my door. I assumed it was just my friend. When I go to look out of the peephole, I saw no one was there. I was pissed off that I just imagined someone beating at my door. I went back to bed. 3 minutes later, I hear someone messing with my window. Confused, thinking it was probably maintenance fixing something, I slightly opened a slat of my vertical blinds to see what was going on. I see a man walking away with my window screen. Still a little bit confused, I sat back on my bed, but suddenly realized I never received a notice of work nor asked for any. By this time, the burglar had come back and I heard what sounded like him trying to pry my window open. I kept a decorative sword by my bed. So I grabbed it, unsheathed it, and braced my back against the wall next to the window, remaining out of sight from the burglar. He popped my window open and took his hands to slowly open a view from my blinds. Adrenaline had begun pumping into my veins like nitrous to a car. I raised my sword and blindly stabbed it out of the window. I missed his eye by an inch. The burglar fell back into the bush under my window, allowing me to swing again. It landed, but being just a decorative sword, it just merely cut his jacket. He got up and ran like the wind as I yelled at the top of my lungs for him to get out of my house. After 10 minutes of cooling down, I called the police. Operators asked why I waited so long to call. I told her I couldn't find my phone. The police showed up, they asked me some questions, and then asked if I'd ever thought about being a cop. What a win-win. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the killer. A home intruder is a scary prospect by itself, but a home intruder that kills, that's a whole other level of scary. Reddit user Quintelligent may have had exactly that experience. They said when I was around 5, my family lived in a pretty sketchy neighborhood. One week, my mom and dad had all 3 kids sleep upstairs in the same room. At the time, I didn't know what was going on, but remember seeing a bunch of squad cars and helicopters patrol the area. It turns out there had been a serial stabber running around who had killed someone and hospitalized 2 others. My mom woke up in the middle of the night to someone messing with the door lock. She calls the police and waits at the door with an umbrella. Eventually, whoever it was gives up and leaves. We never found out for sure who was trying to get in, but the stabber was arrested that night trying to break into another house just 2 blocks down. Next to number 8 now, we have help. Reddit user Diogenes Cell Pirata shared a story that shows even whispering a single word can help in these kinds of situations. They said, while I was a graduate in school, I was getting some much needed and probably pretty deep sleep in the afternoon after pulling an all-nighter and turning in a paper that was due earlier in the day, and woke up to hear 2 guys talking to each other in the next room. I was very confused, but luckily realized what was going on before I said anything or got up. I heard them talking about how to get my TV out of my apartment and decided it was probably best to just act like I was sleeping and hope they just went on their way. While lying there, I realized I had a cordless phone nearby. I dialed 911 and didn't say anything, I just whispered, "Help." The cops showed up 10 minutes later just as the 2 guys were walking out of the door. I woke up, I felt good, I got my TV, laptop and a bunch of video games back. I did not go back to sleep though. I finally appreciated the mandatory response to any 911 call. Moral of the story, if you need to call 911 and aren't sure what to say, it's the thought that counts and you don't need to say a word. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Home Alone. This Reddit user said, when I was 17 I had a black powder rifle. I was cleaning it in the basement, I put it together and took it upstairs for storage. storage. While I was upstairs, I heard someone come in through the basement garage door. I thought it was my brother or my mom coming home, but when I opened the door to my basement, I saw some random old guy coming up the steps. I asked him what he wanted, and he simply asked if I was home alone. I grabbed my rifle, even though it was empty, and pointed it at him, telling him he needs to leave the way he came in. When he got to the bottom of the stairs, he unlocked the door that he came through. It didn't register with me until later that he had locked the door behind him when he had entered the house. Next up at number 6 now, we have the superhero. This one comes from Nickled92, and although it's scary, it does have a wholesome end. Just wait. They said, I was 12 years old, hanging out with my dad, watching a movie at around 1 AM. All of a sudden, there is a pounding on the door. My dad gets up and twists the knob. As soon as he does, the door flies open, and a mountain of a man throws the door open. My dad is pretty big himself, but gets knocked to the floor, but happens to grab the guy's shirt on his way down. They start wrestling and fist fighting in the entrance of the doorway. I'm standing at the top of the steps looking down and watching all of this in slow motion. My dad started screaming at me to get his shotgun out of the closet. I ran upstairs, I grabbed the shotgun, ran back to the top of the steps and pump around into the chamber. Immediately after hearing that sound, the guy tries to run away, but my dad holds him down on the ground. At this time, my neighbors had heard the yelling and scuffle and ran over. They called the police while my dad is holding this guy against the ground, and me, a 12-year-old kid, aiming a shotgun at the back of this dude's head. The police end up coming with their guns drawn, and I put the shotgun on the sidewalk. This guy ends up getting arrested and supposedly had just gotten out of jail for a strong-arm robbery and battery. I can't even imagine what would have happened if I had been alone, considering my dad has worked third shift my entire life, but it just happened on one of his nights off. My dad was literally a superhero to me after that day. Moving on to number 5 now, we have £400. Malishka told this story on Reddit, and when I read it, I almost jumped, so I hope I can do it justice for you guys now. She said, I was working the morning shift at the time and was about to go to sleep around 9 AM when I heard a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and there was a huge dude that I did not recognize standing there. I figured if I didn't say anything, he would just go away. He did not. After a minute, I walked into the other room trying to decide what I should do. While I was pacing, he threw his whole weight, probably a good £400, into my door and busted the frame right in. I screamed as loud as possible, "What the fuck?" and grabbed my phone to call 911. 10 minutes later, I was locked in my bathroom and the cops finally showed up. He ran off once I screamed. I rode in the cop car and ID'd him a street over. Thinking back, if I had just said, "Who's there?" he probably would have left, but oh well. I was very disappointed how I reacted when something happened. I had taken self-defense classes and everything, but all I ended up doing was yelling expletives and fumbling to call 911. I was standing in my kitchen and didn't even grab a knife. I'm prepared now though. As a 23-year-old girl who grew up in the suburbs where nothing bad ever really happens, it sucked. I promptly moved house. But now we have the afterthought. This one comes from a Reddit user who said that when it came to their home intruder experience, what happened after was actually scarier than the experience itself. They said, my brother had just left with his friend, so I was home alone at around 7:30 PM. I was sitting on my bed with my dog when the lights go out in my house. I'm thinking my city must have just experienced a power outage, so I leave my room and start walking around the living room. After about 3 minutes of using the flashlight app on my phone, I head back into my room with my dog and lock the door. So I'm in my room watching a YouTube video when I hear something break. Normally I'd never think someone would try to break into my house, so I said the wind probably blew something over. Now my dog is snarling and I shush her when I see some lights going under my door. Someone tries to open it, but luckily I had it locked. When they go into another room, I sneak up to my door and place my ear next to it. I hear a voice saying, "Grab the laptop." I'm freaking out, but still have doubt that someone would actually break into my house. I was thinking my brother came back with a friend and they were looking for stuff, so I yelled, "Who's out there?" No response, so I said it again, "Who's out there?" When I didn't get a response that time, I just yelled, "Get out of my house. I'm calling the police." I call and the police arrived maybe 3 minutes after. The front door was broken into. The robbers took a stack of quarters and a camera. What scared me the most wasn't the experience, but what my mom said to me afterwards. She said, "Thank God the robbers weren't professionals or they might have broken into my room to shut me up." I had nightmares for a couple of days just thinking, what if they did try to break into my room? The whole experience was frightening, but if anything, I'm glad it happened to me instead of one of my cousins. Coming in at number 3 now, we have The Good Boys. Alright guys, if you can get through this story, I'll have a picture of some dogs for you at the end of it. I promise. This one comes from Reddit user KCURTP. He said, my wife was at home without me. Midday, she's in the front room of the house in the living room. She hears the gate to our private fence open and then close. She looked out of the window to see a man she didn't know walking along our house through the backyard. Our dogs were both home with her. We had a boxer and a boxer Rottweiler mix. She went to the back of the house to lock the back door, but by the time she got there, the guy had already started to open the back door. She tried to push the door shut on him, but he was much bigger than she was, and he pushed his way into the house, knocking her on the floor. Both dogs jumped over her. One of them actually used her as a launching pad and broke one of her ribs and went at the guy. Both dogs connected and latched on and began to tear his arm and leg up pretty good. My wife had the wherewithal to get her phone out and call 911. The guy tried to leave and run, but our mutt pulled him into the house and kept him until the police arrived. My wife was finally able to pull both dogs off him and get away once the cops arrived. He was charged with breaking and entering as he had broken our gate. He spent 3 days in the hospital getting 2 surgeries to repair his arm and leg from the dog injuries. He deserved them. Since then, we have always had large dogs. We now have a boxer and 2 English Mastiffs. My wife still gets edgy though when home alone. Next up at number 2 now, we have The Archer. This story comes from Reddit user Torchit, and it could have been in a weirdest home intruder stories, but it's also scary, probably for the intruder. You're about to see why. They said, I do traditional archery. I also sleep naked. This will be relevant points in about 20 seconds. My last house wasn't in the nicest of neighborhoods. Not bad, but not really the kind of place you'd want to leave a door unlocked. Luckily for me, I remembered to lock the door, but forgot that I'd burned something in the oven earlier and left the kitchen window cracked. I lived alone with my 2 cats, but my tomcat might as well have been a guard dog. At about 2 in the morning, I heard my cat going crazy in the living room, and I knew something was up. So I grabbed my bow off the wall and knocked an arrow. I walked into the living room quietly, flipped on the light, and behold, a young man, half in, half out of my kitchen window, straddling it like a horse. It's not an easy window to climb through. The sill is about eye level. I drew back to my anchor, lined up my shot, and said, wrong house, mother. He stared at me completely dumbfounded for a moment, considering that he'd just been caught in the act of breaking into a house by a 62-inch bow-wielding woman wearing nothing but socks. I think he handled himself quite well actually. He promptly rolled out of my window and beat feet. I drew down, rehung my bow, got dressed and called the police. I don't think they believed me, and the guy was never found. And finally, number 1 now, we have the runaround. Our final story today comes from Reddit user Kasek04, who said, my mom was outside mowing in the middle of the day and I heard the phone ring. I ran downstairs to try to answer it, missed it, but then saw a tall man stand up in the back room of the corner of my eye. I ran downstairs to try to answer it, missed it, but then saw a tall man stand up in the back room out of the corner of my eye. I was a little kid, so don't ask me what I was thinking, but I went to guide him to the front door to get out of my house. My mom walks in from the back door, the guy runs upstairs, and she immediately can tell from the look on my face that someone is inside the house. She grabbed a butter knife and began chasing him around the house. The guy must have been high. He was so scared, he was begging her to not hurt him. He ended up getting away, but not before my mom cut him because she was trying to hold on to him until the police arrived. Yeah, that's creepy. Can you guys imagine being a parent and just catching a glimpse of someone running upstairs after they were just talking to your kid? That would give you nightmares for years. Do you guys have any crazy home intruder stories? Perhaps we can do a part 2 for you all. Don't forget to go and check out Beyond the Screen. Link is in the description box below. Thanks for watching as always guys. My name is Danny Burke and I will see you all in the next video.